Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak, and thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Kidi Mwaga is the convener of the Interparties Youth Forum on my far right, as well as an advocate. Angel Mbudia is the chair lady, Jubilee Party Youth League. The president of the Kenya School of Law, Joshua Okayo, is here with us, as well as Ivy Mushoki, who is the Global Youth Parliament East Africa representative or coordinator. And in the course of this broadcast, we'll be having live pictures from the Bomas of Kenya, which is the designated area for the public participation exercise for today here in the county of Nairobi, where Kenyans will be trooping to get their views heard regarding the impeachment motion against the deputy president, as well as keeping an eye on the counties of Nyeri, Nakuru City County, Eldoret in Uasin Gishu, Mombasa City County, and as well as Kisumu, where in the course of the other broadcasts after daybreak we'll be getting the live proceedings relating to the views Kenyans will be expressing regarding the impeachment motion against the deputy president that's before Parliament, and will be coming back to the floor of the National Assembly on Tuesday for final vote. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for staying with us. Coming to you again, Kidi. This is all about responsibility, because if you look at the grounds, they are the level grounds by the lawmaker who had tabled that impeachment motion, cites issues relating to gross violation, undermining the presidency, issues in regards to devolution. But all the 11 grounds, if you look at them in introspect, befits the country's political class when it comes to constitutionalism, the rule of law, and principles of good governance.
Yes. One thing about this impeachment process is that if you look at it, and there are very solid grounds for removal of the deputy president. The only feeling is that there is nothing that Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua is accused of that his colleagues either in Parliament or former colleagues in Parliament or his friends in the executive are not guilty of. So that in a proper legal Puritan society, we would have the whole place being cleaned up. To use the words of Donald Trump, whom I don't quote often, is that we would have drained the swamp. But then now that we are here, I think it is a good place to start that first, let us remove this one, bad apple, and then if there is any other apple that is remaining, we will have now a fair chance to interrogate if that apple is good or also deserves to go. But in the meantime, as they're removing the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, I think that it must serve as a lesson to all those people who are holding positions of responsibility, that then in the moment that you have a chance to rise to these positions, then you also have a responsibility to rise to higher ideals, that there are things you must shed off. I am constantly embarrassed when I have to hear my deputy president talking about the mountain region as if he is a deputy president for only that area. I come from the Lake region, a place that historically has been deemed to be on the polar side of the political interest of the Gema region. But then, as we build our society, you believe that we want to have a leadership that then makes people of the lake and people of the mountain feel that they are part of this project we call Kenya. That someone in Mombasa and someone from the Rift Valley can feel that they have the same opportunities. I don't want to speak from an idealistic standpoint, but the manner, the viciousness with which the deputy president even made it, that for him, first and foremost, it must be Murima, was disappointing. Look at when we were reconstituting the cabinet. When reconstituting the cabinet, at the very least, one thing that the executive should have given us was meritocracy, meritocracy, and meritocracy. But even as we were reconstituting the cabinet after the Gen Z successful protest, we heard that there are certain numbers that had to be retained within Mount Kenya. So I think that we are here. It might not be a perfect place to be, but it is a good place to start. Thank you.
And Angel.
No, it's okay. No, I wanted to... No, I wanted to build on that thought on the nexus of Murima, and I was just getting a picture of if Jesus were to come to Kenya today and walk into Parliament on Tuesday, I think what he would tell parliamentarians is if you have not committed the crimes that this man has committed, be the first one to throw the first stone or the first one to cast your first vote.
Yes.
And I think as a nation where we are, I think it's on Kenyans to sort of reflect the kind of leadership that we have, because everything rises and falls on leadership.
Yes.
And I see that Kenyans are the ones who bear the biggest brunt here, because nobody is clean in this government. We clearly made choices on August 9th, 2022, and that is where the rain started beating us, because we made decisions based on emotions. We made decisions based on 50 shillings, 100 shillings, and now it's about time we realize the cost of elections, the cost of making a decision on the day of casting your vote. Because we have so much civic participation, talking about how it is important to vote, but finally, Kenyans now understand what it means to go, wake up in the morning, go to your polling station and decide and elect your leader. Because that is what it means when you go and make a decision on the kind of person that should represent you at the highest echelons of leadership. Like right now, look at the globe, and my colleague here, Ivy, is talking about global issues like climate change. We are looking at we're in the brink of a third world war. Yes. in the world, and we are looking at Israel being such a big player, and we are part of the NATO ally, and we are friends with the US, and you know, all that. We could also get caught up in all that mess. But we are not thinking outside the box. We are not thinking about the things that surround us. All these theatrics that we are playing to distract Kenyans from the real issues are very wanting, because now the media no longer talks about the Adani deals. Yeah. We are not talking about the university funding model as much as we were talking about it 2-3 weeks ago. We are not talking about the plights of Gen Z that played out 1 or 2 months ago, and that is being ignored. We are a chess game, and we are the pawns of William Ruto. We are the ones that he is moving around to decide. Now we are talking about who will be the next DP. My bet is on this, my bet is on that. That is not supposed to be the conversation that we are supposed to be having. Adani deal is going home, and it is going to his pocket, and it is going to the people he will going to decide. And that is the biggest thing that we are missing as Kenyans. And we need to relook ourselves as Kenyans and as people who partake in the realization of this country. We have to be very deliberate about this country. We need to fight for this country. It is the only thing that we have as a nation.
Yeah. And Joshua, is this move by Parliament a deflection from the real issues? Because if you had the stories of many Kenyans who yesterday had decried, to be just specific, those who are on dialysis and chemotherapy, and because of the move from the leap from NHIF to the new Social Health Authority, they were unable to access healthcare despite directive by the Ministry of Health. So out-of-pocket expenditure grew exponentially as of Tuesday to Thursday yesterday. The issue of missing Kenyans, 132, you included, of course, who was forcefully abducted, 42 plus Kenyans who had died. The issue of fake fertilizer subsidy, and these are substantial and critical issues that Parliament is overlooking, is it, in misplacing the priorities and now focusing on Gachagua, who has gross shortcomings, but they don't equate to the other issues that Parliament should be addressing, including counties that have not received payment for the last 4 months, 3 to 4 months.
Actually, even if the gross shortcomings could be equated to what is happening outside, we would still not fault him, because they chose him from the very beginning. So these are issues that should have raised from the very beginning, instead of waiting to this point. But coming to the real issues, look, the legislators are trying to make as much noise as possible to divert our attention from what we should be focusing on. Like you've said, we should be focusing on the new funding model for university students. We should be focusing on the SHA, all right, for our health sector. We should be focusing on those important aspects of human being. But because we've made a lot of noise, and that the world has realized that Kenya is underperforming, or the Kenyan government is underperforming when it comes to real issues that affect the common mwananchi, then they have to divert our attention to what? To political conversations. And that's why even matters public participation that we're discussing here, they're doing it so seriously, so intensely, so that we have to talk about it. You understand? They have to ensure we talk about this, so that the other things happen underground, and then before we realize, then they have gotten away with some of these things. Look, the new funding model has been declared unconstitutional. Is there someone talking about that today? No. Why?
We'll talk about it shortly.
We'll talk about it. That's very good. If we'll talk about it, that's good. But you see, not every Kenyan is talking about that now. Everyone is discussing, is Gachagua going home or no? All right? They have successfully diverted our attention, but then we should not allow them to divert our attention. I think that's why it's important that as we are getting into the next part of discussion, we talk about the new funding model. Yeah. And we talk about something else that is not this public participation on Gachagua.
It's the agenda, second, after Ivy's last comments here. And Ivy, is this a deliberate move by the political class to sweep under the carpet pressing issues concerning the public and tapping on the emotional base that they activate whenever it comes to such matters and during the electoral cycles, to an extent that they want to see of Gachagua, who, if you look at those who had signed, the Kenya Kwanza lawmakers, who had signed the impeachment motion, who appended their signature and who were labeled patriot when their names were patriots, when their names were read in parliament, had literally been the vocal cheerleaders of Gachagua when he established Kenya as a shareholding entity, saying that the Rift Valley and Mount Kenya people have more shareholding than other Kenyans, yet it's a constitutional democracy. They ought to have told him, pull back from the brink, take a step back. But now they want to impeach him based on what they have supported him on, yet there are other pressing issues. So are they sweeping these issues under the carpet, in your view?
Thank you so much for that. First of all, I want to just say that, in my opinion, it's a very sad affair that these are the things that we have to deal with. Right now, even on the newspaper, we're seeing that about 800 million people globally are going without food in a day. My question now to you, Ayub, is, will the impeachment of Gachagua put food on your table? Will it put food on the young people's table? Will it bring back reforms? Will it bring back resources, distribution of resources, equal distribution of resources? Will it make sure that at the end of the day, your healthcare will be covered? It won't. So at the end of the day, this is the government that we have. This is the government that we have. But what can we do with this government that we have? This government that we have to hold them accountable. The young people are asking for, where is their accountability? So much is happening across the board, even in Nigeria, even in Bangladesh, the world is coming into a dynamic paradigm shift. And we are saying, what are the cutting edge issues? What are the intricate issues that we want to deal with, especially with regards to reforms within the continent, within the country? These are the things we want to push the government of the day. As much as things are happening, everything is going this way, namnai. But at the end of the day, I want to just say that what is it are we doing to reform the systems? The young people went on the streets just recently. But I can say that the things that they're pushing for, have we really had them? Have we really even paid attention to what they're crying for? Some people go without food in a day. Some people are they are going through without even jobs, without unemployment. It's causing frustration. It's causing precedent. People are decaying in the inside. Mental health is rising. So many urgent issues that we need to, and we are saying as the young people, we want to hold this government accountable. What are you doing to make sure that the young people of this nation are carrying on board the wealth generation for the next of kin and the next generation that is coming? Thank you. Okay.
Kidi, and ladies and gentlemen, let's now shift our attention to also another important matter, which certainly outweighs the Gachagua impeachment and this, because it is a matter that concerns university education. And yesterday, the court handed President William Ruto and the Kenya Kwanza administration yet another fresh blow. The High Court ordered the suspension of the implementation of the new funding model for higher learning institutions, now in its second year, and has put the education of 250,000 students, that's 250,000, and the future of cash-strapped public universities in limbo, potentially forcing the government back to the drawing board over its model, which it touted as a redress to the problems that dotted higher learning institutions. It appears, besides the ruling, which came as a shocker yesterday, Kidi, Angel, Ivy, and Mr. President, that there's always the problem of readiness in coming up with substantial reforms that are required across the board, including in the education sector. And here, to be specific, the new funding model, which has literally locked out bright but needy students from households that require support. A straight airplane, but the student can go to university.
Yes. One, the Constitution of Kenya envisages that we will not be discriminated upon on any basis, including the basis of what my parents earn. And remember that by the time people are sitting KCSE, most of them are transitioning into adulthood. They're 18 years, they're 17-year-olds, or they're 17, almost on the cusp of being adults. So I think, in my thinking, that I do not know the logic and the thinking of saying that if you come from a certain background, then your government will withhold certain services from you based on the mere fact that your parents are deemed to possibly have been doing well. I think that we have an opportunity now to turn our focus on the interventions of this administration in totality. The education funding model, in my view, is a mess. It is a mess in part because of how fortunes change. What is there today might never be there tomorrow. So you might be looking at my parents' pay slips or someone's parents' pay slips. But then business has gone down. In the last 2 years that they have been in office, they have killed small, medium, and medium enterprises. Mm-hmm. If you go to the auction yards, you find a lot of properties have been auctioned. So that to say that someone who was living well about 2 or 3 years ago, that those fortunes can't change, I do not know where where they get that thinking from. Thirdly, I think we must also remember that for every policy intervention that we have had that has been sold to us as a reform, has left so many citizens wondering if that is what reforms looks like. Of course, there is usually the small pain that comes with the changes, but I don't think those pains come in the fashion and manner that we are seeing it. Look at SHA, for instance. I don't know if it is proper if I call it SHA. Yeah. SHIF, the old NIF. Yeah. My friend Angelo calls it Shisha. Look at it. Look at the cover it was giving to civil servants. Most civil servants are average middle-class people who worked hard, went to school, after graduation, got a job here in government or there, and they've been, every family is hoping for the promise of upward social mobility. Today, you realize that the cover that they were given has been taken away. They are told that their cover is now pegged on bed occupancy. I mean, it is frivolous. So you begin to wonder if this government has got an enmity with the middle class or people who seem to be doing well. So that I let my other panelists weigh in, I must remind them of the words of Ronald Reagan, that you cannot strengthen the weak by weakening the strong. Let this government not designate the middle class as its enemies. Okay.
And Angel, one of the major messaging that the Gen Zs had for the political class, appreciated by the president some 2 days before the breach of parliament, was the conversation that they brought on the table. Yes. So you're dealing with educated, tech-savvy, urban, connected, mobile Kenyans who know what's happening, and universities keep on churning out. Does this then also reveal the aspect about the quality of education at our universities? And does this also explain the government embarking on that review process, that it got it wrong from the onset? And they are dealing with people who are questioning all the moves that they make, including the new university funding model. What's the response here then? And how can this get corrected from the government?
Ayub, I like your trail of thought towards a more shifted thinking towards our education sector. Particularly, I am a proud beneficiary of Kenya's free primary education. I am a proud beneficiary of Kenya's Joint Admissions Board, where we were paying about 30,000 Kenya shillings per year just to be in the university and get good quality education. And Kenya's education system is one of the best in the world. It is very competitive. Kenyans we churn out globally are excellent. Our education system needs to be strengthened. And one thing I need to also highlight as well, when you look at a differentiated kind of thinking in the education sector, is leveraging on our digital infrastructure. When we look at the Harvards, the Oxfords, the Tsingwas of this world, the global Ivy League universities, they are shifting towards more online learning, more of leveraging on the digital infrastructure to be able to educate their own citizens. And I think that's something that we need to also think about as a nation, because when I look at some of the courses that have been offered, like let's say a Bachelor's of Education, English and Literature, we can talk about phasing out some of the physical expectations for students, because what are we funding with the education funding model? We want to keep the lights on in the universities. We want to ensure that there's security. We want to revitalize the physical infrastructure, but there is a digital infrastructure that we are not taking advantage of. I think if we can phase out some of the ways we've been doing things. Let's say first year, second year can do it physically in the universities. Third year, fourth years can do it virtually from home or from wherever they are. And I can remember even from my university days, when we're in third year and fourth year, going to class was not so exciting for us. If we could have an online class and attend it from wherever we are, would have been much more exciting. I did my master's online, 100% for 2 years. And that allowed me to do so many other things, and at the same time, still have my education papers with me. And I think this is the opportunity that we need to give comrades. I mean, we need to give students so that they are able to go to class, attend their classes, and still be able to do photography, come do editing, those who are interested in journalism, those who want to go out and start a business. We can give our young people more leverage, more opportunities for them to be able to get into the private sector that we want to build. We want to invest in innovation so that they can be able to take up those spaces. We need to stop thinking about how we've been doing education in 1996, 1980. We are not there anymore. Today, people are getting jobs based on basic computer skills, not because of necessarily how you can cram a book from cover to cover, but on how you can deliver. So I think our education funding model needs to be rethink based on a different education policy where we can reform exactly how we educate Kenyan students.
Yeah, and Joshua, in the coming up with this, in the formulation stage, did the government overlook one major character which defines a majority of households in Kenya, the poverty level, and then the banding aspect? Because you realize what many comrades decried was where they were banded, the category they were in. And in as much as the government says the amount they ought to have paid is small, but you look at the household and there's that gross inability to do so, especially for a mother or a father who makes 100 Kenya shillings a day, which is 3,000 Kenya shillings in a month. I mean, that's near impossibility, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, a majority of households, especially those whose children are in university, are very poor, and they make, 100 or less in a day. That's number one. Number two, the government enrolled this model in the guise of, you're going to pay what's commensurate to what you earn. But that is not the case. You talk to those students, they will tell you that we have band 1 to band 5. Most of them are placed on band 4 and 5. And band 4 and 5 are, those are the top, the topmost. So you imagine if 70%, about 70% of these households are, if we are talking about being commensurate to what you earn, then they should be placed at band 1. But almost all of them are placed at band 4 and 5. Then what are you doing? Yes. It means this is someone who, if they are supposed to pay, say, for example, what's coming from their pocket is supposed to be 182,000, all right? Then they can probably pay 0.1% of that 182,000. But in the real, in the papers and in the media, you have told people that this, the most downtrodden, the lowest, right, in terms of earning, are going to pay the least amount. But then you come to understand the least amount is probably 70,000 shillings. Ayub, 70,000 shillings for a family that earns 100 shillings a day. Where are they going to get 70,000 shillings?
A lifetime fortune.
Exactly. And if we talk about, say, band 4 and 5, whatever the case, and then you tell us that these ones are going to pay this because they earn a little bit more money. Again, there is a loan that they're going to pay after. Are they going to be able to cater for this loan after they're done with school? And that also ties to the employment issue. What if they don't get employed almost immediately after their university? What do they do with the loan? And then the government will come after them with court cases and telling them that you have to pay this money because you did what? You signed to that agreement that we brought before you. I have two issues with this new funding model. Number one, it was not so urgent. It was not so necessary at the moment.
And was sufficient explanation given on what was wrong with the old funding model? Like
none at all.
And I'm sure a majority of you are beneficiary.
Yeah.
Yes, none at all. It was not explained to the students who are the largest shareholder, or rather stakeholders. The students are affected most, and they were not consulted. There was no public participation conducted to really gauge the feeling of the students and what they think. And even their parents who pay the monies were not consulted. They were not indulged in this conversation. Now, again, we are talking about one of the very most important, governance values and values and considerations when you want to implement something. Public participation. Public participation, as you said, under Article 10 is one of the most important things that should be considered when you want to, employ something like new funding model.
Yeah.
The students were not consulted. There was only one town hall meeting that was conducted in Nairobi. No, there were two actually that were conducted by the president. One at the coast and one here one at the State House and one here in
KICC.
In KICC.
Yeah.
Two. And do you know the people who are called student leaders? How many student leaders do we have? There are about 2,000, representing almost
all universities.
All universities. You can imagine. What percentage is that? Coming back to the conversation as to what is proper public participation, what amounts to quantification of public participation.
Yeah.
I think it would be important that we have a team, and this is taken very seriously, so that we have a team that goes to all universities.
Yes.
And we get views from every university in Kenya, across Kenya, so that we know what do these students really feel. Because at the end of the day, if you take 2,000 people to represent 1 million people, you can wet their pockets, and then they'll have to sing your tune or dance to your music, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
I know people who are paid money for them to sing the tune of the president, to say this new funding model is the best thing that ever happened.
And Ivy, coming to you, if we are to ask ourselves the question as to why our systems are not working, take education, we're discussing it now, can the political class look itself in the mirror and answer that question? Had the taxpayers' money been properly appropriated, then we'll have a working education system. But here you are, the poverty level is because of misappropriation of the funds, the public funds, revenues collected, and which systematically then locks out young people from accessing education. Then there's one opportunity that Katiba presents them with. They have the largest number in terms of the voting bloc and the largest number in terms of our demography. How can they now turn this to the opportunity which is presented to them, granted to them by the Constitution? Because the political class is dead against them. The system is not working for the young people.
Thank you so much, Abby, for that. Because one of the few things I always say is heavy is the head that wears the crown. It's heavy because the obligation is under the crown, and the crown is the one holding the head. So it just so happens that I'm going to use the example of this. I happen to sit on the advisory panel for Professor Van Kuyen, who happens to be the chancellor, the new chancellor of Nairobi University. And one of the few things that we keep learning from him is that as much as we are fighting for reforms, as much as we are fighting for the systems approach and fighting for a new systems of how to think, we need to be solutions-oriented. Mm-hmm. So where does this come into play? In his 5-point agenda for the University of Nairobi, one of the few things that he's trying to instill is the aspects of green jobs, especially for the young people in this generation. Green jobs in the sense that if these young people were to take a loan in the university, and by the time they end that university, and they're assured of a job by the end of that university, will you take that loan or will you not take that loan? The aspect is, what are we doing exactly to actually help to propel the solutions-oriented systems? What are we doing to help propel the education systems? I happen to be part of a cohort. We actually just launched the first cohort of its kind in the whole of Africa, which is a climate academy, creating aspects of matters adaptation and climate change within the continent. And Kenya is spearheading this on the front line. We are on the front line. So this means that there's hope for the young people. But what are we doing? How are we creating this systems approach so that it can help us as young people to continue to propel? I understand that, you know, the cry is the loan is a lot. The money is a lot. But let me ask you, if that loan will assure you by the end of those 4 years or 5 years or 6 years, by the end of those years, you'll get a good paying job, a salary that's worth your time and worth even for your family that is coming, won't you take that loan? It all depends on what is the table, what is on the agenda, what is on the main agenda. What are we selling to the young people? Is it hope or are we selling failure? These are the pertinent issues that we need to describe, especially with regards to this university funding model. In all of these universities, what is being offered? What is on the table? Okay.
And Kidi, then, is it then a time to think outside the box for young Kenyans, given the talent that they got, and they willed? And where do you think that opportunity can be if we are to take back the advice by President Obama, who was here in 2015 and said, look outside the box beyond the white-collar jobs and be creative and invest your energies in self-employment?
Well, young people can think outside the box, but they can only think outside the box when they have the government as a primary partner in that process. Because you remember that the tax regime that we have erected over the years, particularly in the last almost 12 years, the 10 years of Jubilee, and the last 2 years of Kenya Kwanza, have been less than friendly to young people. In the last 2 years alone, you look at the number of SMEs that have collapsed, the number of young people who are, struggling pre-2023 and right now are entirely out of job because of these enterprises have proved unsustainable, in large part because of the taxes. Then you realize that we must first have a government that thinks outside the box. But then you look at our scenario and you realize that while the government has lived so well and so large, the fortunes of the people has been in constant decline. In such a setup, and if you look at government intervention in regards to the realities of the people, the government think that the best and the most intelligent way to respond to the plight of the people is to engage them in public displays, to engage them in just that displays, because you realize that there is a conference in Bomas called for young people, and then after that, you don't hear policy interventions on how this government is going to partner with young people. You hear that there is a town hall meeting where the head of state is going to speak to young people. And you listen to the explanations on things as basic as university funding model. You don't get a whiff of newness. And I know this weekend they are going to engage us in another facade around town, claiming that they are bringing young people into government. We cannot take tokenism from government and then say that that is the most intelligent government intervention. Again, to quote the words of Noam Chomsky, that when governments realize that they cannot use dictatorial, the power of the policing powers to contain the people, they make sure that the information you get is wrong. That is why, again, to go back to the point that we had left, possibly why, at this point in time, when we are asking pertinent question on why our government, in its wisdom or lack of it, is choosing to give away a strategic national asset in the name of JKA in a deal that is as bad as the Adani deal. That is why government, while right now when we are asking why are so many people suffering in healthcare centers across the country, the government thinks that the most intelligent conversation we need to engage in is impeachment of deputy president and why he should be impeached or not impeached. So I think that before young people say that they are thinking outside the box to get new employments, to get new opportunities, the first thing they must do is to remember their civic power and make sure that they think outside the box in terms of civic mobilizing and organizing. and make sure that the government, if it is this government that shall be retained in 2027, it shall be retained having been taught the fear of God. But if a new government will come, then that government will also shall have been taught the fear of God.
Yes, Angel. Certainly in disagreement.
If this government is restored, again, we will have failed as a generation.
Thank you.
Because this government has consistently been showing my generation, our generation, the middle finger.
Yes.
And as we are talking about civic discourses, as you have pointed out, Kidi, one thing that breaks my heart in the education advocacy platform is what government did to the student leadership element in the universities. When we were in the university here at the Students' Organization of Nairobi University, SONU, we would ensure that government did not at any point imagine to raise university fees. And if they did, the consequences were better imagined than experienced. But what did the government do? It liaised with university administrations and ensured that they passed the draconian university bill. The Duale bill that was spearheaded by Duale, still in this government. And then what do they do 2-3 years later? They introduced the university funding model. And this is a model that had crippled the voices of university students, because for a long time they did not talk about it. They were not engaged in the first place, because it is only until the Gen Z protest took place that was put on pressure because of the cost of living, part of that conversation. But university funding model was a conversation that had started way before. But student leaders could not speak about it, or students could not speak about it, because their voices were robbed by Duale in his Duale bill. And now the biggest problem we have actually in this country, Ayub, is usually communication. Just ensuring that you involve every stakeholder in a certain sector is something that we have failed to do completely. We like to do things under the table, even the Adani deal under the table. Yes. But if you realize that if you let people know your intentions, if you're more transparent about the goals that you want to realize from a certain policy, things become easier and easier. Now, when you put things under the table, this is what you get. An education funding model that could have been fantastic if all stakeholders could have been involved and maybe told this element will not work, do it like this. This other element does not work, do it like this. We miss out on the entire point when we do things the way we've been doing them in this country. And this government not only tries to change that, it rubber stamps that element of ensuring that there's no transparency when we're trying to implement reforms, especially in policies like education.
Yeah, and Joshua, when it comes to the transparency aspect in education, as she has talked about, there seems to be also the clouds of uncertainty and the shrouding in secrecy of the major deal, in this case, the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, despite the contraction by the government of a renowned international company to do the proposal about JKI and proposed better deal than Adani, but still there was the affection towards the Indian conglomerate, and also the 104 billion Kenya shillings technology system for our healthcare, which was done via direct procurement. The Ministry of Health failed to sufficiently explain the reasons and the challenges it faced, because the Act does explain that it's only in cases of war, civil disorder, where the direct procurement can only be used as an avenue. It seems there's a lot happening, and transparency is a problem for Kenyan governments.
Definitely.
Including the education, the funding model.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, nothing is brought to the table for discussion. And if we were to talk about the many, especially laws that are passed without the common people realizing or knowing really that there's something in the parliament, in the House of Parliament that is being discussed, then we would talk about thousands of them that are being passed without us knowing. Actually, were it not for this Finance Bill 2024 that has now given birth to a woke nation, then we would still be, swimming in the previous waters, where we didn't know what was happening. We just depended on what we are told by our MPs when they come back to our constituencies, and we depended on them.
They now enjoy a paradise status, aren't they?
They are, and we depended on the few analysis done by the media. Again, Ayub, if Citizen TV were to analyze all the bills that are discussed in Parliament, or that are brought to Parliament every day, you would not do it. You do not have the capacity to do that. So that means there's a lot more that is being done underground. We had a meeting with a Directorate of Legal Affairs at the Senate. They told us, look, we are dealing with bills every day. Some of them you've never heard of. They just come and pass. The few that you get to know is because they are so important that they impact your life so greatly. But the many that you get not to know affect you in one way or another, but you can know them because we don't bring them to the limelight. They were even calling on us to, the students at the Kenya School of Law, to try and participate in some of these bill-making processes and to be able to support the Directorate of Legal Affairs at Senate in trying to design some of these laws. So that tells you that there's a lot happening that we don't get to know, that we don't get to hear of, and that we don't get to participate in. And the government is happy when you don't participate in these processes, because then you will not know the negative issues within those implementations. You will not get to know how negatively one thing or another will affect you as a person, as a citizen of Kenya. That is where they thrive most. So I think it is upon us to go deep into seeking whatever is happening, seeking information as to what new thing is brought before Parliament, number one, as to what new thing the government intends to implement, and as to what new thing the government intends to restructure. Because then without that effort to get to understand and to know by ourselves, they are going to hide everything to the extent that we will always wake up to a new Kenya. You know, Kenya inaweza nunuliwa, and then we will not even know that Kenya has been bought. So yes, a lot of things are happening behind doors and under the tables. It is upon the Kenyans themselves to wake up, make an effort, a deliberate effort to ensure that everything comes to light. And you, the media, have a very critical role to play. You have done a lot, but there is more to be done. Because if not for that effort, then we will be taken advantage of to the extent that people will die, the poor will become poorer, and the rich will grow richer. And then we shall have that rift even grown bigger.
They should be deliberate, like Parliament is deliberate.
Exactly. It will be very deliberate.
In my opinion, I feel like as a human being, or especially as a voter in this country, I have the sovereign power. That means the sovereignty in my vote, it's my power. And I feel like my vote has been taken advantage of. Because, yes, maybe there are no spaces, or there are no institutions, or there are no dynamic kind of shifts that can be able to help me as a young person to be able to propel. So what would that mean? Fighting my other young people for resources, fighting for opportunities, fighting for, things that are supposed to just come easy. I want to take us back to the late Muammar Gaddafi, one of my very great philosophers that I really like to read on. And the reason why Muammar Gaddafi, we still remember him up until today, is because he did something for his people. He created free healthcare for all his people, that were able to, even as women, when you are a mother, the government was paying you as you're pregnant, the government would pay you. They would also pay you even to take care of that child until they're a certain age, until that child can be able to take care of themselves. Education systems were free. Literally, young people were able to go from primary to university level, all under the government. These are the kind of reforms the young people of this generation want. We want to see what is the government doing to be able to actually give us these facilities or these things without us even asking, because it's our right. It's our right, surely it is. So the education systems that are not fair for us, it's our right to have good education. It's our right to have good healthcare. It's our right to not have bad governance. And it's our right to hold this government accountable.
Yes.
What are they doing? Surely, what are they doing? We need more systems approach. We need the young people at the forefront to be able to have pesa hiyo mfukoni ya hiyo Kenya Kwanza. We need that money that they were talking about during those elections. Where is it? The young people need that money. We just want to see it, honestly speaking. Because if they don't have this money, they will be on the streets. They will be wondering where is the unemployment, where is the favor. And that is why we are holding this government accountable to say, are we doing the right thing? Are they setting the right example? Impeaching Gachagua, does it set the right example? Is it going to help us to get food in our stomachs? That's the big question of the day.
Yes.
Are we... and Kidi, here are we talking about an emboldened citizenry that is keen on how they are governed and understand the power that they hold under Article 1, that the Constitution bestows on them, that all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya, and a majority of them are young Kenyans who are keeping the government on toes. Is this going to be consequential if you look at what happened in June and the conversations around the young people who want abductions ended, brutality meted on them ended, calling for good governance, calling for proper functioning systems, including education, healthcare? How consequential will this be on the Kenyan polity?
It is going to be very consequential, Ayub, because I think that young people have made peace with the fact that when they lose their fear, the forces of the status quo lose their power. And you see, the state is unimaginative. We can predict its response. That when when citizens become more active and demands for greater accountability, they do to you the things they did to my brother Joe Kayo. They do things to you like they did to our late brother Denzel Omondi. They disappear you like they disappeared our brother Njagi. That is how the state will respond, particularly when it thinks that, and I was disappointed to read a tweet attributed to someone we all respected. I still respect him because he holds the title doctor, and people don't end up in the Olympics by accident. But someone calling himself doctor and apparently advises the president on matters economy was telling us that political legitimacy flows from the barrel of the gun. We have known polities that wielded the barrel of the gun, but when the people said no, everything came tumbling down. Sheikh Hasina in Bangladesh had the barrel of the gun, but when the appointed Hawa came, she had to flee.
Hosni
Mubarak had one of the most sophisticated militaries in Africa, but when the people decided that enough is enough, they had to go. So it is going to be consequential, and it is going to be consequential in this manner. That one, political parties, which are my primary employers because I lead young people across the political divide under the auspices of inter-parties, have to a great extent been a letdown. A letdown to the extent that they have become more tools of patronage clientelistic politics rather than avenues through which citizens can be engaged programmatically. That avenues through which we, the people, can say that I choose Party A because Party A stands for this and that, as opposed to Party B. But you realize that we have turned most of these political parties into special purpose vehicles for winning elections. So then after elections, then we can mangle them together and say have ODM, which in the election time is everything that UDA stands for. 24 months later, they are working together. There is no problem with that, except that from an ideological standpoint, it leaves so much to be desired. So I think that this young generation now are going to tell the people that primarily we must remember that the voter is sovereign, and that irrespective of which car the political class might drive or give themselves, the voter remains sovereign as we are going to 2027. It is a message we must take to the people. Secondly, we must tell our people that bread is sacred. And we will not tolerate a government that thinks that it can generate revenue by taxing that bread that we eat. I remember during the Finance Bill 2023, when part of the Kenya Kwanza leadership told us that there is a lot of diabetes in the country, and their most intelligent policy intervention was ostensibly to tax the bread. We will tell them that bread is sacred, and we shall not allow them to touch it. Third, and most significantly, we must tell them that the people must be at the center of their policy decisions. If their policy decisions does not increase and improve the lot of the people, then that is a government, to quote someone I love quoting, Thomas Jefferson, it is a government that deserves nothing but abolishing or altering or abolishing altogether. Thank you.
Yeah, and David did in 2017 say if change doesn't come through the ballot, then the barrel of the gun is another option. So therefore holds no high moral authority for his inconsistencies in whitewashing the crimes of or the undoings of whoever side in the political establishment he supports.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Angel.
God bless you.
Yes, and you know, and we also say that the what do we say in times of the absence of war is not there. It's not the presence of peace. Yes, and I think that's where Kenya is at the moment. And then when you talk about political parties, I'd like my generation to understand the real importance of political parties. What Mr. Ruto did, the first thing he got into power, is to muzzle my party, Jubilee Party. He went to divide the political party and even fund some proponents to divide the party. Okay. And recently, Jubilee celebrated its win from the High Court, where Justice Mulwa reinstated Jubilee to its status quo. And then Mr. Ruto again went to ODM to form the broad-based government, and now there is no opposition in that regard. And then now what is he doing again? He's dismantling his own party, UDA party, which is now being divided into two. One thing I'd like young people to understand is that political parties are the vehicles to getting to power. Yes. It doesn't matter how many protests that we take up on the streets, political parties must be the vehicles that we use to get power in this country. Even as we want to have a Gen Z parliament in 2027, we need a political vehicle that will take us to that. Yes. And in this month of Mashujaa, as we celebrate the Shujas of this nation, our Shujas are the heroes who died on the 25th of June. And we must not forget their plight and why they died on that day, so that this country can be better. They were ready to die, and they wanted us to tell their moms that they did their best. Let us not forget that critical moment. Yes. Let us ensure that we take IDs. Let us ensure that we register as voters. And let us ensure that we have one message. If we don't have IDs, we'll have no elections. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, and Joshua, is this post June 25th just a calm before another storm?
Yes. I'm very happy with that question. Because what we say, you know, we've been doing a lot of civic education across the country. And what we say in Swahili is that tumeweka yeye kwa jiko kama githeri. Yes. Anachemka pole pole.
Pole.
Na wakati ataiva. Yes. Tunatoa.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
That is what we are doing. We are putting them on the jiko. Yes. And we are cooking slowly but surely. Yes. At the very end, we are going to get them out of that jiko. So it's a calm before a storm, and probably better than what happened on 25th. People are agitated, and people are not happy with what is happening. Because, you know, what we see is that despite our efforts to try to educate the lawmakers and tell them that there's a job you should be doing, and your job should not be, you know, singing hallelujah to William Ruto as if you are his choir. Yes. Your job should be to represent your people that elected you, that got you to parliament. All right? Yes. Even after doing all that, and they didn't listen, and going to parliament to actually be there to represent our own voices, still they did not listen, then I think the best thing to do is to do better mobilization than what we did prior to 25th of June. Yes. That is what we are doing now. Okay. We are going to going to the masses, or rather going to the villages and towns to tell people about what's happening. It's not just a matter to make them aware of 2027. No. We know 2027 is there and elections will be done. But before then, we know that what we are doing will culminate into something bigger. If we call people out and tell them, look, we have been telling you this and they have refused to listen, now let's go forth and conquer the world. And the world in this case is Kenya. People will come out in numbers to conquer Kenya.
Thank you.
So yes.
Yes, Ivy.
Yes.
Yes, Ivy, your final comments.
So one of my final comments here is that I keep saying that this is our government of the day. And the fact that it's the government of the day, we have to hold them accountable. We have to make them understand that it's a time for us to get what we have been fighting for. And with that in regards, I want to emphasize on solutions-oriented basis. One of the few things I do, especially as a young person, is I've been pushing the climate agenda. And the climate agenda is one of a kind, because that is where you find a lot of hope, especially with regards to entrepreneurship, a lot of hope with regards to the AI, a lot of hope with regards to just solutions that can actually bring back modesty and to create adaptive solutions towards an economic time shift. So I want to just urge the young Kenyans out there that if there's a way that you can actually find solutions and create a home or a basis for us to be to create economic shifts for the country, I believe this is the time that we should come together and bring it forward. These are the times we need to adapt. It's either we adapt or die. And since we don't want to die, we have to find solutions in order to adapt. And because of that, we are having on October 12th the Global Adaptation Action Day. And these are some of the things that we want to bring on board for the young people, to be able to understand what is adaptation and how does it come into play with regard to you as an individual, to you as a local person in the community. How do you adapt to these situations on the ground, and how can you be able to be better? So with that in regards, I'm grateful, and I hope that the young people of this nation are going to adapt to the situations that we are actually dealing with in the country.
Thank you. Let's now sample the feedback. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. The first one, Okelo Mwalimu, says, every time I remember how the DP went out of his way to counter Azimio's anti-government protest by reporting to work by 5 a.m., it makes me appreciate the saying that pride comes before a fall. He has single-handedly masterminded his downfall since the day of swearing in. Gode Barasawere says, Kenya is headed for a dangerous nosedive. The kind of issues we prioritize as a country makes us look the certified clone of East Africa. Samuel Owo says, then the court is frustrating education further since the system has already been adopted. We are expecting courts to be reasonable at times. Such a ruling is unconstitutional to rights of children to education. Eric Whedon says, fellow Kenyans, will impeaching Rigathi Gachagua end corruption? Our leaders should focus on solving real issues, not political distractions. Let's not fall for this mediocrity by political class. Samuel Worth again says, DP Rigathi's time is now that he has shown his true colors of blackmail and strong desire for power. It's time for him to get impeached and that docket be replaced with someone who is ready to serve all Kenyans equally and not Murima alone. Sir Nixon Dugure says, UDA youth delegates condemned Gachagua's impeachment and urged for unity and focus on development. This reminds us not to be so blind with patriotism that we can't face reality. Wrong is wrong, no matter who does it or who says it. Senator Siaya 2027 says, the government was quick to form a bias committee on NFS. I think this is National Forum for Education, NFM. Reports of previous committees on education are rarely implemented, and this was just a theatric to compromise the student leadership on that committee. 30 seconds each. Yes, Kidi.
Considering that all the policy interventions we have seen in the last 2 years do not point to a promising future for the people. A time has come for the young people of Kenya to echo the words of John Knox by saying, who was a Scottish writer and theologian, by saying that, give us Kenya or we die. I'm saying give us Kenya or we die because it has also proved that when we don't demand, they would still come for us like they came for Joe and like they came for Denzel Washington. Thank you.
Yes, Andrew.
On 9th August 2022, we made a mistake, but today, October 4th, we know we made a terrible mistake. Let's not be hoodwinked by these jokes of Gachagua's impeachment. Let's not forget, members of my generation, if this government comes back, we will have failed as a generation. Let's shape the next Gen Z parliament. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Fellow Kenyans, if the parliament is serious about impeachment, let them impeach both the president and the deputy president. On education, our parents went to school free and were paid to go to school. Let our students have free education in university. We have better issues to talk about.
Yes.
Let our attention not be diverted by this political turn.
Thank you, Ms. Ivy.
The motto code for our young people today is greatness. It normally awaits those who intentionally pursue it. So this is what we want to do. We want to pursue this greatness. So as a young nation, let's forge forward this army. Let's forge forward with regards to resolutions and with regards to important reforms. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ivy Mushoki is the Global Youth Parliament East Africa Region Coordinator. Joshua Okayo is the President, the Kenya School of Law. Angel Mbudhi is the Chair Lady, Jubilee Party Youth League. And Kidi Mwaga is the Convener, Interparties Youth Forum, and a lawyer. Your time is all appreciated, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to you too for waking up with us here on the broadcast. Attention will be focused across all the centres Parliament has designated as the collection of views from Kenyans in effect to the impeachment motion against the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. Here in the county of Nairobi, we'll be live from the Bomas of Kenya, where Kenyans will be giving their views regarding the impeachment motion against Kenya's second Deputy President under the current constitutional order. From the county of Kisumu, we'll be having live established link from Laura Otieno. In Mombasa, Francis Mtalaki will be there for us. In the county of Nakuru, Marianne Nyambura, in the company of her camera person, will be there. In Eldoret City, in Uasin Gishu County, we'll be live with John Wanyama, as well as in Nyeri County, where Kamau Mwangi will be standing by, and where the tables have turned apparently on lawmakers who have made a U-turn on appending their signatures to the motion that was presented on Tuesday before the National Assembly, as well as the other counties where that exercise will be undertaken by the parliamentary staff in the public participation exercise across the 290 electoral units in the country ahead of next week Tuesday's crucial parliamentary session, where the MPs will be voting in effect to the motion that was tabled by the Kibwezi West lawmaker, who hitherto, before his tabling of the motion, was little unknown lawmaker at the National Assembly. Thanks for your feedback. Thanks for joining us here on the broadcast. And thank you for your time, and have a lovely morning.